Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms and their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. And, of course, Football at 4 right now with Geoff Mosher on a Mosher Monday as we get ready for the Eagles, as they get ready for the Baltimore Ravens. And Geoff Mosher joins us now for this edition of Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. What's going on, Moshe, buddy? How are you?
I'm good, Mike. How are you? Another dog day of summer, right?
Yeah, it kind of feels like it's a little soupy outside there today. But, man, I'll tell you, we were just talking about this before you jumped on. You know, the fact that the Eagles play Friday night, I cannot believe how fast this offseason seemingly went, the fact that they have a game. And now we got, 8 days of practice. Storylines are starting to emerge. And I'll tell you what, I want to get your take on this because for years we have talked about defensive coordinators here who the fans just did not like, even though their defenses were productive. You had Jim Schwartz, who had that wide 9. People didn't like that, even though they went to a Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl. You had Jonathan Gannon, whose defense got them to a Super Bowl, but people didn't like the style. It's personality over performance a lot of times in Philadelphia. Vic Fangio's personality, it might make people forget that they're not going to like his style of defense.
Yeah, I mean, I still think, at the end of the day, Mike, performance will rule the roost. There were times when Jim Schwartz was liked by Eagles fans. It was just those occasions where they had some tough losses. They had some given up. There were times they gave up some big yardage and that they shouldn't have, like the Super Bowl, for example. But yeah, I think Vic's personality and his willingness to be even more honest than Jim Schwartz was about personnel, about players and things like that, I think appeal to the Eagle fan who really does think it's the Buddy Ryan, the Jim Johnson, the coach who's got the gumption to really call players out, because that's what fans like when guys get called out.
No doubt about it. And it seems that he has started already with certain things. Obviously he has made, last week it was Huff. Doesn't seem that he was all that high on Dean so far. So he has certainly made it known about some of the things that have not made him happy. So let's look at that defensive side of the ball and start with the linebackers. Nakobe Dean, Zach Bond, Jeremiah Trotter. What do we think the linebacking core is going to look like as this camp kind of materializes here?
Yeah, Mike, there's no question this is the most fluid position. This reminds me of safety last year where you had so many different types of players. You had Justin Evans, right, who they brought in, had that injury history, was mostly a nickel corner. They were going to experiment with him at safety and moved him there. And then you kind of look at Zach Bond, mostly an outside rusher, special teamer in New Orleans. Well, they're moving him to inside linebacker, giving him a shot. If you looked at safety last year, they brought Terrell Edmonds in. Fans kind of got excited because he was a 5-year starter on the Steelers. He was a former first-round pick. Well, look, they brought in Devin White, right, a 4 to 5 year starter for the Bucs, former first-round pick, won a Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, what you really have is a lot of players who do some things well and do some things poorly, and that's why Vic Fangio is being honest about the position, and that's why it's in flux now. And it's not a surprise to me, Mike. This is something we talked about. Andrew DiCecco and I did the podcast that came out this morning. Andrew's been at every single practice. Not a surprise to me that Jeremiah Trotter is someone that we've heard has had good practices, a string of good practices lately, and is starting to get more run on the first and second teams. Because if you look at all the inside linebackers they have, Bond's never really played the position before. Dean was hurt all last year, and as you just mentioned, he's better as a blitzer. That's what they used him as in college, a third down pass rusher, more so than a coverage linebacker. So he's decent against the run too, but he needs good help up front like he had at Georgia. And Devin White is a guy who has great athleticism, but fell out of favor in Tampa Bay because of freelancing and not always being in the right spot. And we were told that he had a difficult practice the other night, Thursday night at the open scrimmage. But Trotter is he doesn't have all of those great athletic traits that Bond and White have, and he doesn't have the pedigree that Nakobe Dean has. But Greg Cosell told us that he thought Trotter Jr.'s tape was better than Nakobe Dean's college tape. And here's a guy who may not have all those great athletic traits, but he understands how to play that position maybe better than anyone or as much as Nakobe Dean, because they're lifers, right, at that position. And for them, it's not about it's not about using his great athletic traits as it might be for Devin White. It's about having the intellect to play that spot, knowing where to be, knowing when you're dropping, where to be when you're dropping, knowing how to get downhill, stopping the run and getting around offensive linemen. Because A, his dad is Jeremiah Trotter, and he had an early start, and B, that's how he grew up as an inside linebacker and played it at the highest of levels at Clemson. So it doesn't surprise me at all, Mike, that he's etching his name into the group. But I think when it's all said and done, we got a lot of time here, but I imagine what you're going to wind up seeing is different linebackers in different packages, so that you can use all of their strengths to the best ability and try to minimize their weaknesses. So if you're using a blitz package, you may not have Jeremiah Trotter on the field. You may have your Nakobe Deans and Devin Whites, right, or Zach Bonds. But if you're in more of a coverage, you may be in dime and just want to use one linebacker, and maybe that's Nakobe Dean. Maybe it's Devin White. Maybe it's in nickel. Maybe you've got Trotter because it's a pass or run. You're not sure, and you want your smartest guy out there, or your most football intelligent guy out there at that position. So I think we're going to have to redefine, like, quote unquote starting linebacker, because I feel like we're headed toward having just a bunch of guys playing and using them in different roles.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because that's the linebacker spot, and you wonder, is that going to be the same situation at corner, or do we think we're going to get a more defined corner depth chart?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm really curious to see as camp goes, does Quinyon Mitchell continue to get these first-team nickelback reps? Does the outside corner get settled, or does it continue to be Ringo versus Rogers for the rest of the way, or does Quinyon get a chance to elbow his way into that conversation? I think at the end of the day, when you're a coach, Mike, you want to put your best personnel in the best position to succeed for your overall defense. It's not always about one spot or one guy. If you put Quinyon Mitchell at nickel corner because you think he's handling it really well, that opens up the other outside corner spot opposite Slay for either a Rogers or a Ringo. Rogers runs a 4.22, something like that. He's crazy fast, but he's short. So that's why he's splitting it with Ringo, who's taller and more physical, not nearly as fast and fluid-hipped as Rogers, right? If you put Quinyon Mitchell on the outside, you're probably going to not play Ringo or Rogers in the slot because neither of them are very experienced there, and you're going back to the Avonte Maddox or the Tyler Hall. You're keeping somebody else that might not be as good overall as a player as what you would have if you had Mitchell in the slot and Rogers on the outside or Ringo on the outside. I feel like you're more dynamic, you're faster, and you're more athletic if you're able to get Quinyon Mitchell and either Rogers or Ringo on the field compared to having Quinyon Mitchell and Avonte Maddox or Tyler Hall or some other nickelback on the field, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you mentioned Tyler Hall. It's funny. It's almost like his name hasn't been mentioned at all. There's just so many guys down there, and it's funny when minicamp, training camp, or when we got to training camp, it was Ringo and Ricks and Job, and what's happening with all these guys. Tyler Hall's name, I think you saying it there was the first time I've heard it since camp opened.
Yeah, I mean, he's mostly ran with the second and third teams. I believe in today's observations done by Andrew DeCecco, there were a couple of notes on Tyler Hall. It's not that he's not doing anything. It's just that right now, I mean, put yourself in Vic Fangio's shoes. You know that even though you weren't the coordinator for the defense
and by the way, Moshe, not to interrupt,
it
it doesn't help that you can't get Cooper DeJean out there either.
Of course. That does not help. And you know that last year you had one of the slowest, most undynamic secondaries in the NFL. So naturally, a guy like Tyler Hall, who's been around the block, he knows what he's doing. You kind of know what you're getting with Tyler Hall. I think Vic Fangio really needs to know and learn quickly what he has in this collaboration of young defensive cornerbacks that the Eagles have been piling up over the last 2 years to see if they can get on the field first and be smart and be in the right spots and understand the defense and be dynamic before you're going to give opportunities to, veterans and journeymen, things like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, do they rather Hall might be the guy who might be more ready now, but do they want to risk losing one of those younger guys?
Exactly. I mean, they've got to find out what they have. And hey, look, first game is Friday against the Ravens. That'll be a really nice test. The Ravens are, do they still have that streak going? I think I got broke last year, right? The preseason winning streak.
I think it did. I think they lost last year. Yeah.
Well, they're going to be hungry to start a new one. But no, the point is they're always well coached and well prepared, and they always bring it in the preseason. So it doesn't matter who they put out there. They'll be well coached and well schemed.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. Taking a look at the Eagles, we're looking a lot of things on that defensive side of the ball. Today, Vic Fangio brought up Jalix Hunt, the 3rd-round pick, and I guess most people just figured this would be like a redshirt year for him. He also brought up Milton Williams. He said he tried to trade for him when he was in Miami last year. So that kind of perked me up a little bit of, does he have a bigger role in mind for Milton Williams than maybe we thought? And is there a role, if Jalix Hunt has a role, you're thinking, what could that possibly be? We're trying to figure out how Nolan Smith is going to have a bigger role. You've already got Huff. You've got Sweat. So what do you make of those two guys, Milton Williams and Jalix Hunt?
Yeah, it's funny. Milton's, I don't want to say he's had a quiet camp. It's just we haven't talked about him a whole lot until Vic dropped that nugget yesterday. But he's entrenched. I mean, he's a starter. I mean, the story at D tackle this camp is the second-year player, Moro Ojomo, really, pushing to try to get more playing time. But that's going to be tough when you've got Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and Milton Williams all in your way. But I'm sure they'll figure out a way to get that. They like to rotate, and I'm sure they will figure out a way to get Moro Ojomo on the field. And I think, this is a big year for Milton Williams because it's the 4th year on his 4-year deal. Now, Howie could have said last year at this time, you know what, if I get something good, I will trade him because I don't foresee giving him a contract extension because I already have this Davis Carter and a kid like Moro Ojomo coming up, but he didn't. So that tells you he likes Milton Williams. We know the coaching staff likes Milton Williams, and Milton Williams is, I'm sure, motivated to want to get himself either an extension or a really nice free agent deal.
Yeah, that one was kind of interesting today. And, Vic Fangio kind of singling those guys out. He singled a lot of guys out today. And one, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who had to leave the field, but it was James Bradbury who got the first-team reps when Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Do you think it's becoming more apparent that Bradbury will have a role in some capacity?
Well, let me flip this question around to you.
All right.
If C.J. Gardner-Johnson leaves practice with an injury, the Eagles need to put somebody next to Reed Blankenship. Who's next? If not James Bradbury.
Well, right now, right, because Sidney Brown's not even out there. I mean, I guess you could look at Avonte Maddox. So he has played some safety, but yeah, there's not a lot of options. That's for sure.
Right. Obviously, it's again the only way I see James Bradbury being able to make this team is at that price tag. Excuse me, is being a starter. So, yeah, you got an opportunity now to see can he be a starting safety with C.J. Gardner-Johnson out? How does he look? So naturally, you're going to give him that shot. He ain't making the team as a fourth safety. It's just that's not going to happen at that price tag. So here's the opportunity now with C.J. Gardner-Johnson out, and hopefully that's not too bad. We'll find out more tomorrow for James to show what he can do.
All right, that was something that happened today as well. Haven't heard a whole heck of a lot about the two big men in the middle, Carter and Jordan Davis. There were 8 days in, and my question really revolves around the impact that those two guys, that position has in this particular defense.
Yeah, I mean, remember, this today was just the third padded practice. If I'm not mistaken, there was the link one and 1 2 days before that. So, but Jalen Carter has looked really good. I've been, as I understand it, in camp. I know he's gotten the best of a couple of different interior offensive linemen at times. Jordan Davis is interesting, and Andrew and I talked about this on today's pod. They're practicing for 4 straight days. It was pretty hot today, and I know the temperature is going to cool down a little bit in the middle of the week, right? But I'm really curious to see, and Andrew will be the one to really chronicle it. What is he like on Wednesday, the 4th? Because that's 4 straight days. We already know he's lost the weight. We already know, the pads have come out, and he's been practicing and he's been doing his thing. But, it's all about conditioning more than what your weight and size is. So let's see how he does here as the week goes on. And because to me, this is a very important week because the Eagles are having in the midst of 4 straight practices, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? So let's see how he is on Wednesday on that 4th day of 4. Because last week was sort of like training camp light. They had 3 days off in a 4-day span, with the only practice being the Thursday one. So I thought that was a little light for them. Now it gets more intense.
Yeah. Do you anticipate that a lot of guys will play Friday night?
I do not. Well, not a lot of first-teamers.
Right. No, obviously, yes. You need at least 22 guys out there, or if not more. But some of the battles, though, because there are a lot of players that seemingly are, kind of battling for spots here who have some status.
Tight end, Mike. Tight end, third wide receiver. And, I don't know if this is an uh-oh moment yet, but Paris Campbell now has a groin injury. He was not at practice yesterday. I think he left yesterday and wasn't at practice today. You're already seeing Johnny Wilson, the rookie, 6'7" rookie, getting inside and outside reps. And Jalen Hurts has talked about him. The coaching staff has talked about him. So he's a guy that you're going to probably see jockeying with Britton Covey, who's also made some really impressive catches from the slot. I mean, this is, to me, what you're watching on Friday night is the Coveys, the Johnny Wilsons. You're watching the backup tight ends because E.J. Jenkins has been playing well. And while it looks right now like Goddard and Calcaterra, your number 1 and number 2, C.J. Uzomah should be your 3 because he's one of the few guys you can block. But I don't know how much C.J. Uzomah has left. That was a big question going into camp. If E.J. Jenkins or Alberto Quanabom, I just butchered that last, Alberto, can either one of those two can prove.
It was a good effort. It was a good effort. It was a good effort.
I should have said Alberto. I really should have. But, Andrew's been telling us, and I'm sure with you, that E.J. Jenkins is a guy who's really making some plays. Tanner McKee is connecting with him, and he's 260, so 250, 260, I think 250. I mean, if he can block some and the Eagles are comfortable with it, you may see him elbow his way onto the 53-man over a guy like Uzomah. It's not likely given the money they gave CJ, but hey, anything can happen there.
Where are you at the right guard spot? Are you ready to kind of say, I think this is going to be Becton's job?
I am low in the pecking order, Mike. I haven't even gotten any right guard reps yet, but maybe tomorrow. No, I'm concerned about it, So I've been told that Mekhi Becton has looked okay, for a guy trying to play the position for the first time. Some good reps, some not great reps. Nothing terrible, nothing great. Obviously, Tyler Steen returned to practice today, limited. So you hope he gets back into full practice either tomorrow or the next day and gets out there. But it's amazing to me that Brett Toth is really kind of climbing this ladder here. They have other guys that you thought might get right guard snaps, like Matt Sharping, who's been in the league for 4 or 5 years, has playoff experience, right? You got Darian Kennard, they got from the Chiefs last year. I was told that the Chiefs thought he was a better guard than a tackle, so you thought he could get in line. But Brett Toth, who's been with the team like on and off and on and off and on and off, and then through the injury and all, has been playing center, guard, and can play and has played tackle for them in the past. And he got right up in there when there was some injuries the last few days. So he'll be another one to kind of watch and see if he can elbow his way into that conversation. But yeah, I mean, right now, right guard looks like a big question mark.
Well, yeah, and Steen, not being in there, you wonder, hey, the more and more that he keeps giving Becton reps, how much more does that, make it more difficult for him to get back out there? So one will, you wonder, I would imagine Becton's going to have to play in games at that. You got to play him at live speed to see if he can handle that position there, which would be, it'd be interesting to see how he handles it. That's a big man playing guard, but if they can get him out there and get a successful player, when he's been healthy, he's been very good. His problem has been injuries.
No doubt about it. And, they drafted the kid out of Michigan, Trevor Keegan, who's gotten some first-team reps when Dickerson was out and when Becton was playing right guard. Keegan is a mauler. I mean, he's like your vintage, John Runyon-esque type lineman, except an interior lineman. But I think he's only a left guard. I don't think he's had right guard reps in either college or yet at the NFL. He would be someone you'd want to say, hey, let's take a look at him, but Toth was getting those snaps instead. So I guess Keegan is really just a left guard only player at this moment.
All right. A lot there. Will Shipley, people seem to like what they're seeing from him. We'll get to see him on Friday night, I would imagine. That spot, as you kind of mentioned, the third wide receivers, Johnny Wilson keeps getting the buzz. Not so much for Ainias Wilson, who has a little bit of the drops we keep hearing there. So we'll see how that. Ainias Smith, excuse me. Johnny Wilson, Ainias Smith. Those Smith and Wilson, the most normal names you can come up with. Smith and Wilson. Those two guys there. We'll see how they get out there Friday night. So that'll be some of the offensive battles to kind of watch. What are you hearing about the backup quarterback spot?
Oh, Kenny Pickett's going to be the backup quarterback. The reason Tanner McKee is going to get some second-team reps here, we talked about this also on the pod, is he's not a camp body. They were impressed with him last year, kept him on the 53. They want to develop him. He could be your future backup, and there are so few reps in a training camp practice for anybody on the third string, fourth string, like Will Grier, that you don't get enough out of it. But if this guy's more than a camp body to you and you want to give him a little bit of time and experience with a better surrounding cast, then you got to give him a couple of second-team reps here and there, which is what he's been getting.
All right, Mosher's back on Wednesday, and we'll take a look closer at who might do some damage in that game on Friday night, who can win jobs. 3 preseason games, remember, and it all starts Friday night right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Geoff, appreciate it, bud.
Take care, Mike.
All right, Mosher's here, and, of course, football at 4 on the Sports Bash as we get you ready for the Eagles season.